Chapter 8, Section 3, we're doing parts A and B. Our objective is to learn to find circumference and area of circles. And our essential question, how is pi related to diameter and circumference? Key vocabulary terms, circle, radius, diameter, and circumference. A circle is a set of points in a plane that are a fixed distance from a given point called the center. A radius connects the center to any point on the circle, and a diameter connects 2 points on the circle and passes through the center. Let's make sure we have this in our notes. Circumference is the measure of the entire way around the outside of the circle. Diameter goes through the middle, and it is a straight line all the way across. That can go anywhere in the circle as long as it goes through the center point. The radius would be halfway across, so the diameter is twice the size of the radius. And we have our center. So you can see the radius goes through the center and the diameter goes through the center. Circumference is the distance around the circle. Let's look at some formulas. First of all, let's talk about pi. Pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to the diameter. Thus, for any circle, if you divide the circumference by the diameter, you get a value close to pi. Remember, pi is approximately 3.14. So circumference divided by diameter would give us pi, which means circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, using our algebra steps. We can also change diameter to 2r because the radius needs to be doubled to equal the diameter. So you can see down here we have two different formulas for the circumference. Choose one that you like to work with. You just have to remember, if you're working with a radius, you need to double it to become a diameter. Pi is an irrational number that is often approximated by 3.14. It is also approximated using the fraction 22/7. So you may see that occasionally, being asked to use 22/7 for pi. That's a little bit more accurate than 3.14. If you use the pi button on your calculator, you're just going to get a slightly different answer than if you are using 3.14. That would be more exact, but try to follow whatever directions you're given. And if you're not given any directions, then go ahead and be as exact as you can using that pi button. Find the circumference of each circle in terms of pi and to the nearest tenth. This might be the new part for you. You're used to calculating out the decimals. In terms of pi, that means that we're going to write this with pi as part of the answer. So we start by figuring out that we have a radius of 8 centimeters, so we need to double that. So we're going to take 2 times pi times r. We double the radius, we get 16, and so our equation, 16 pi, is what our answer in terms of pi looks like. So it's the step before we multiply by 3.14 to get our final answer. So you basically need to show your work, and if you show your work, you will have both solutions because you've written out the two constants multiplied by pi. Let's look at a circle with a diameter of 4.25 inches. We don't have to do any work with diameter. We just multiply that by 3.14. So our answer in terms of pi would be 4.25 pi, the symbol. And we like to put the symbol after. And then that's about approximately 13.3 inches. We're rounding to the nearest tenth, remember. Notice our units are just centimeters and inches because this is like perimeter. We're just adding up how much we have. Area. Area of a circle is pi times the square of the radius. So pi r squared. Order of operations says we square that radius first, then we multiply by pi. So you can see in the example they've demonstrated they would do 3 squared to get 9, and they've just put the 9 in front because that's the way we like to write our answers. That would be in terms of pi, and this would be our final answer. So find the area both in terms of pi and to the nearest tenth. Circle with a radius of 8 centimeters. So pi times the radius squared. 8 times 8 is 64, so we get 64 pi centimeters squared. And remember, this squared here is part of the answer label. It is not something you actually use. So it's a unit because we're measuring how many squares would fit inside of that circle. And then our answer would be 201.0. They did the 0.0 because it says to the nearest tenth, so to be accurate with that, we would add that 0.0. Let's do the next one. We have a diameter now. We can't use the diameter, we need the radius, so now we need to cut the diameter in half. So we divide 2.2 by 2, and we get 1.1. So we take 1.1 squared. That's 1.21 pi. That is our answer in terms of pi. That means we haven't multiplied yet. This is useful when you're trying to be as accurate as possible and you start to add, subtract different units when you're talking about area or circumference and you're combining numbers. If you can keep pi in there until the very end, you'll be as accurate as possible. Anytime we have to multiply 3.8, something like that, we're obviously rounding those numbers, so we're not as accurate as we could be. Let's look at some different situations. A second hand on a clock is 7 inches long. What is the distance it travels in 1 hour? And here it says use 22/7 for pi this time. So the second hand, it's the black one, the long one, but the red is showing you that it's moving around. That is 7 inches long. And we're trying to figure out the distance it travels going all the way around in 1 hour, 60 minutes. So we're looking at the circumference. The circumference would be that outside. We're not looking at how much area it covers in the middle. We want to know the outside edge. That's pi times diameter. Since it's 7 inches for the radius, our diameter would be twice that much, 14. So we replace pi with 22/7 this time. Multiply, we get 44 inches. So the distance is the circumference of the clock times the number of revolutions. So 44 inches is one trip around. In 1 hour, that second hand is going to make 60 different trips. So we would multiply 44 times 60 to get 2640. A Ferris wheel has a diameter of 56 feet and makes 15 revolutions per ride. How far would someone travel during a ride? We are on the Ferris wheel. We'd be on the outside, so our revolution would be us going around the outside. That's circumference. 56 is already a diameter, so we multiply that by pi. We're using 3.14 this time. So 176 feet is one revolution around. Multiply that by 15, about 2,640 feet. That's it. Make sure your notes are filled out completely. On the left-hand side, write questions that could be answered from the material in your notes. Review your notes and complete the summary before class.